When Rohan and I were teaching at the K through 9 school in Maytaw, Thailand, one of our very first classes was the sixth grade. Sixth grade is a weird age and was uncomfortable for us as the kids were pretty unresponsive towards us at first. It was very hard to get the class to follow tasks properly and keep them engaged. For a while, a lot of us dreaded going to sixth grade and deemed it our least favorite class. I particularly didn't like when one student, named A, seemed to glare at me every day from the front row. After the first class, I told Rohan that she must not have liked me because she'd been giving me the death stare all class. He told me that I didn't know this and I shouldn't assume that she hated me. Despite his reasoning, for the rest of the 6 weeks at that school, I tried my best to avoid interacting with her. I made that decision in part to make it easier for her so I wouldn't bother her, but also for me so I would no longer have to face her so-called death stare. I had let my original impression of her feelings toward me influence my treatment of her to protect myself against further judgment and scrutiny, and I hadn't given her a fair chance to prove me wrong. I wasn't allowing myself to be vulnerable by immediately alleviating my discomfort. This was a habit that I've had almost my entire life, but I never felt like it was problematic until this program. That belief was challenged many times in orientation alone. The first activity that did this was the River of Life, which was a creative way to tell our whole life story, including our biggest struggles. The night they told us about it, I journaled about how dumb it was to tell virtual strangers personal details of our lives. Little did I know that was only step one of many. The first mentor group meeting was a series of personal questions designed to make everyone closer on an emotional level. That it did. Everyone in my group was already crying before I finally stopped restraining my own tears. When they saw that, everyone in the group started cheering, and I quickly became embarrassed. I didn't see the point of being so emotional so early on. Many of my friends at home had never seen me cry, and I thought vulnerability was unnecessary in friendships. I think I was just afraid of it, afraid of judgment and criticism, and that my emotions would scare people away. TBB taught me that instead of running from it, I should lean into the discomfort. After learning to open up, I realized how quickly my friendships with people in the group had strengthened. I told people here details of my life that I'd never told anyone. I'm pretty sure many people here can attest to the fact that I probably cried the most in public by the end of the program than anyone else. I no longer had to be forced to be vulnerable as it came naturally. I realized that people are often not actually judging me, and I just assumed that they would. My entire life, I've been using defense mechanisms to minimize the impact of judgment. One of those is my constant need to say sorry. I always knew I said it a lot, but it was not until almost everyone in the group had told me to stop that I realized how problematic it is. I still didn't know why I said it so much, so I used a tactic that Erin taught me called why journaling. Why journaling helps you get to the root of a problem by constantly asking why. Why do I say sorry? Because it's a habit. Why is it a habit? And so on. After realizing that I used sorry to excuse myself, because I believed that I was a burden and saying sorry would eliminate that. Although I still do say sorry sometimes out of habit, I no longer believe that I'm a burden on others. I started this program with so many assumptions about people, cultures, concepts. Over the course of this program, many of them were disproved. One of these assumptions was that I originally thought that Sky didn't like me, and I later learned that she thought I didn't like her. So in Guatemala, we never really talked to each other. We essentially gave each other a version of the death stare. One time in Panama, though, we decided to take a walk around the island with just the two of us. After talking for a while, we realized that we avoided each other for no reason, because neither of us disliked the other. Now she is one of my good friends from the trip, and I believe we will have a long-lasting friendship. On a more academic level, our seminars taught me the danger of making assumptions. Before the program, I believed that aid plans and organizations were always motivated solely by altruistic purposes. When we talked about the US President's Emergency Plan for AIDS Relief, or PEPFAR, during Bush's presidency, I realized that that is not always true. In one article we read, it said PEPFAR included Christian initiatives which did not enact critical needle exchange programs and only supported abstinence-only education. Learning this was eye-opening. While PEPFAR is unquestionably a well-intentioned initiative, they clearly have ulterior motives, and their charitable programs are tied to carrying out those goals. Many would criticize the fact that it conditions its programs on certain religious principles that a lot of people would not support. Through these seminars, I learned that philanthropy and aid are often tied to controversial tenets, which contradicted my past beliefs. I learned that first impressions, even with respect to charities, can often be wrong and warrant further inspection. This is an example of one of TBB's core principles of learning, which is that no one holds a monopoly on truth. On the last day at the Thai school, we went to each grade to say goodbye. When we went to say goodbye to 6th grade, I saw A standing outside of the classroom waving. I waved back, and she ran up to me, wrapping her arms tightly around my waist, as you can see in this picture. Sorry. She followed me to the rest of the classes we said goodbye to. I instantly regretted avoiding her based on my assumption of her feelings toward me. Just like my first impression of vulnerability, Sky, and aid, my last impression was drastically different. I learned to look past my assumptions, which are usually wrong, and stop trying to protect myself against judgment. And that's it.
Yay! Yay! Well done, Julia. Thank you so much. Okay, what questions do we have for Julia? Julia, are you still doing why journaling?
Yeah, every time I face something that I don't really, a problem that I don't know the root of, I'll go back and do why journaling.
Great. We have a question from Robin. How has vulnerability shaped your return to home?
I think when I got home, I talked to my friends and my family a lot about certain struggles that I've been having, such as my struggle with depression and my body image issues that I had never talked to my parents about before, and I recently talked to my mom about that. So I think that I learned that asking for help isn't a sign of weakness, and is actually strength.
Awesome. Thank you for sharing that. Have you developed any new assumptions about the world over the course of your trip?
I've tried not to make assumptions anymore. I'm not sure. I haven't given that much thought, but I think that I'm trying not to it's kind of inevitable that we'll make make assumptions as along this trip, but I think I've done my best to try to break them down as soon as I have them, sort of.
Great. All right, any final questions for Julia? Okay, here we go. Julia, has your experience caused you to change your ideas about your possible career path?
No, because I have no idea what I'm gonna do. I'm undecided. I'm going into college undecided, but it probably will influence me along the line. I just don't know how yet.
Definitely. Okay, no further questions. We will move on to our next student.
Thank you so much.
All right, thank you, Julia.